Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. And today I got a review for you guys of the Spyderco Delica 4 and the Zome green handles. This is a knife that has so much history to it, and to make it all better, you add a little more history with the Zome green. Now, if you're like me and you've never heard the word Zome before, well, if that's even how you pronounce it, I tend to mispronounce on this channel. It's what I do. The Zome green, or what Zome is, rather, is basically a specialty dye technique in Japan that basically makes very interesting multicolored polymers and I think fabrics as well. I don't know. I'm basically just going off of the little card that comes with this knife when you get it. So take what I say with a grain of salt. If you guys want to look into it, I recommend it. I have not, but you definitely should. And as for the Delica itself, this is one of the classic knives, especially if you're like me and you are quite the collector. This knife has so much history and kind of molded a lot of what the knife world has kind of led to. It introduced, a couple interesting things, such as a mid backlock instead of the low backlock that came on stuff like the Buck 110. Had the Spyderco hole, which was so easy to use, easier than even thumb studs, and could be reverse flicked, which is kind of unique. I wouldn't say that was something they were doing back in the 90s when this guy was first introduced, but it's what we do now because everybody's become way too cool for school. This knife is absolutely incredible. It's such a good knife, but I don't want to give too much away before I start giving you guys a size comparison. So here is this knife by itself, and of course this is its big brother, the Endura. The Endura is my first ever pocket knife and was the knife that I kind of tend to gravitate toward when it comes to FRN. But yeah, these two are pretty far off in size. They do make a medium version, the Endela, but I personally think the Endura is the best of the best, so I don't need none of that. Here is a smaller Spyderco in the PM3, and I figure since I'm bringing in the PM3, I'll bring in the big mamma jamma himself, the PM2. This one's the Knife Center exclusive, rocking the crew wear, rocking the Flytanium fat carbon scales. And as you guys can see, the PM2 makes both of these knives look pretty hilariously small, which, that's entertaining. But the PM3 is much closer in size, and in fact, I'm going to bring on the Native 5 because I think these three knives kind of fit in a very similar size and weight class. You guys can see there the Native 5 is pretty close to this guy in overall size. I think with the, I keep bumping it with my finger, sorry guys. Yeah, with the Native 5 coming in possibly a little bit taller, and same goes for the PM3. About the same size with the PM3, maybe coming in a bit taller. So very interesting stuff. Sorry if you guys couldn't see much of that. I put my hands in front of the camera like a ding-a-ling. Moving on. We do also have a Mannix, which I'm just going to flash this just to show off a bit. It's 15V. Very cool stuff. I think it was the first ever 15V they ever did. Yeah, very cool. Now, showing off some other knives just for some basic comparisons. 80 20.5. This guy's quite a bit smaller. Not quite a bit. It's a little bit smaller. We got the Hogue Deca. I figure this is a pretty good size comparison. These two are as close in size as any other knife I own. They're not that close in size. Just compared to my other knives, that's probably the closest size comparison outside of, obviously, the two Spyros. Anyways, 940, yeah, quite a bit smaller. And I think one final one, just to kind of be like, yo, the size class is definitely got a lot to it. You also have the little Kershaw Bel Air. This one's in the clip point. And yeah, these two are basically the same size. So very cool. Time to get on to the review, you guys. Time to talk about what I like and don't like about this knife and if I can recommend it for you guys. Right off rip, the history behind this knife alone is more than enough thing to like about it. Just being able to carry a piece of knife collecting history is a joy. Not to mention this knife has an incredibly nice blade. I know, hey, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I just started on not the blade. Usually I start on the blade, but no, I wanted to go over something unique because I'm cool. Now moving on. The blade is super duper nice, super slicey, super thin blade stock. You can't help but love it. You know what I mean? Can't help but love it. VG10 steel, some people absolutely despise VG10. I'm not one of those people. I carried an Endura for many years. I shouldn't say years. It was maybe a year, but I carried it for a while. You know what I mean? And I got to use VG10. Sharpens like a dream and cuts like a dream boat. You know what I'm saying? It does so incredibly well on its slicing. It's going to hold a mediocre edge, but it'll take a nice edge. So that's pretty good. Now, I say mediocre, but let's not kid ourselves here. It's like OS 10A, kind of. Maybe closer to like a BD1, possibly slightly better than BD1. It's not S30V, it's not S35VN, but it's going to hold an edge to a moderate extent. It's mediocre, but it does the trick. It is fully stainless too, which is always nice. I got really sidetracked on the steel. That's on me. I'm moving on now. Coming down here, there's not a lot of writing on this blade, and I like how they kind of engraved the Spyderco VG10 into this little part on the blade here. I think that's kind of nifty. I like how detailed the Spyder is too. I've never seen the Spyder be this like vibrantly dark. So I do quite like that. Those are just some aesthetic things that I really like. But moving down, I love the jimping here and the little thumb ramp. I love a good thumb ramp. More companies need to be making thumb ramps. I don't know why so many knives don't have them, but Spyderco seem to always have them. Love that. Love it on this knife. It's really great. And all this little jimping back here on the spine doesn't really do much, but I guess it's all right. It doesn't hurt my finger at all. In fact, kind of gives me more of a place to nestle. So I like that. Moving down, I do like I think it's multi-directional pattern, multi-directional texture on the handle. It's very nice. Gives you a good non-slick grip that it's second to none. I mean, it is for FRN especially, which is kind of notoriously slick sometimes. This is great. I love this texturing they do, and it's not very abrasive on the hand. I will also say I love the little stamp here. It wasn't really necessary, but it makes it so when you put the pocket clip on, it doesn't get this pattern to the side of it, making it fray or whatever, depending on if you're wearing jeans or whatever. It won't damage your pockets is what I'm trying to get at. And I should also say this has not only an ambidextrous carry style. You can have a pocket clip on this side or on this side, and it's a back lock, so that makes it ambidextrous. But it's also got a 4-way pocket clip. Now, this is just the basic spoon clip. It's black coated, but I feel like it really, really is nice that they put these pads here. A lot of companies don't, and it gets annoying. So this is really, really nice. I do like that it is only one side has the hardware heads on it. I know some people don't really care about this, but I feel like it does give this knife quite the aesthetic flair where it looks like it's pinned, but it's actually not. I don't know. I kind of like it. Simply put, the ergonomics are quite nice for how small this knife is. You guys can see there's a lot of like rounding on the humps of all the finger grooves and stuff. Oh, that makes it so butter. It makes it so nice. I feel like this doesn't wear on my hand. I think it's just an incredible, incredible thing. They were able to make a knife this small, so ergonomic. We love it. This was made in Seki City, Japan. Japan is not China, you guys. I know some people see Japan, see Taiwan, see all that stuff. It's not China, and some China knives are pretty good. I do think that Seki City, Japan, although they do make some of the cheaper Spydercos, they do a great job, and this one is no different. And that being said, this is a Spyderco, and I love Spydercos. They are some of my favorite knives, and their backlocks are really nice. The action is remarkably smooth for this being a backlock. And I think finally, the one thing I will say, the handle color is awesome. I bought this color for a very good reason, and I can tell you now that it's here, yeah, it's awesome. It is so awesome. The colorway, the fact that it's got little black like spots kind of all throughout it, and the fact that it kind of looks like it's like camo. I don't know. I love it, you guys. Whoops. Totally just bumped you with my other hand. So sorry about that. Anyways, you guys, moving on to what I don't like about this knife. Now, I will say the thumb hole is a bit on the sharp side. There's some pretty clear sharp edges in there and sharp edges here on the back of the blade. I don't really love that. Wish they would have rounded that off. The overall kind of finishing, you know, on this knife, especially the handles, is pretty bad. You guys can see there's a lot of like little raises in the FRN there, and it's just seems like it wasn't very well machined. You know, I guess that happens with these plastic handles and stuff, but it just kind of sucks. Moving on, you guys can kind of see here there's no real cutout for a sharpening choil. There's just a little dull edge right there, and it's, I don't know, it makes sharpening not very fun. I've had to touch this guy up a couple times, and I'm mainly going off of the Endura because this guy's really only needed a strop. or like a hone on a ceramic. But the Endura I've had to fully sharpen, and I will tell you right now that not having a sharpening choil or anything is brutal. It definitely is brutal. I will say this is a smaller knife. I don't tend to love smaller knives, and this one definitely doesn't take full advantage of its blade because it's got all this dull right here. Could have put a finger choil here. Could have put more edge. You know, they could have done anything. And instead they decided to make it just a barren space, made it no finger choil because this doesn't have a cutout for one. It's just pointless. And I don't know why it's there, and they didn't just take advantage of a longer edge. But Spyderco does confusing things. And then I have to say, you guys, this knife, and I will say this is it, because this is definitely the worst of the worst. This was a knife that I remember there was a time this was like 50 bucks, 60 bucks. You know what I mean? This was a knife that for VG10, which at the time was a super steel, kind of still is. I don't know if people still consider it one, because honestly, VG10 is so easy to sharpen and so stainless. But anyways, this knife had a very good steel in VG10, especially when these knives started coming out in VG10. Everyone was going gaga because VG10 was good. And had really nice fully lined handles, which I do love that they're fully lined. And it makes this knife, you know, maybe a little heavier, but not much, so it doesn't really matter. But regardless, fully lined, cool FRN handles, which at the time were very like, whoa. And then, of course, you have VG10 handles, or VG10 blade steel. This knife was definitely worth 60 bucks, 70 bucks, you know, at the very most. But this knife is currently going, this version specifically, I know is going for around $100. You know, most standard models I'm seeing for like 90 bucks, maybe a high 80. And they do go on sale pretty frequent, so you could probably find them for like 70 bucks. But for the most part, these are just painfully overpriced. You know, this is a knife that is competitive with many Civivis, should be competitive with many, you know, CJRBs, just should be very competitive in a lower price range, but frankly finds itself so removed, I don't even know where to class this knife anymore, because it's too expensive to be a budget knife, feels and looks like a budget knife, and is probably priced around the mid-range, but it doesn't really have the quality, nor does it have the material to be considered that. So I don't really know where to class this knife. It's way too overpriced, and Spyderco has been doing this nonstop. I love Spyderco. They are a company I've collected so many of. I literally have basically half of my collection as Spyderco's. It's a little less than half, but it's pretty close. And so when I have and collect so many Spyderco's, I've just noticed that over time, I've collected less and less because their prices have gotten insane. I don't even have a regular Shaman. I don't even have a Bodacious, which I really wanted one, but it's so out of my price range right now. I just can't do it. So I just got to tell you guys, I love Spyderco. Hate that they're bumping up their prices to absurd amounts, and this knife is victim to it more than any. So that is definitely a bad, and almost could push me to saying I don't recommend this knife. But you know what, you guys, I gotta recommend it. It's got so much history. It is a great performer, and it does an incredible job at what it's kind of designed to do. It's supposed to be a smaller, lightweight carried knife. It does a great job of it. But I can also say that this knife has its issues. It's not gonna be for the high-end knife collector. And I mean, at the end of the day, the finishing issues and not really, you know, being priced well, it's just, keep that in mind. But it's worth buying, worth having in the collection for sure. This is definitely a solid, for the history alone, I'll give it a 7.5. You know what I mean? I want to give it a 7, but I'll give it a 7.5 because the history is so rich. But anyways, you guys, thank you so much for watching. This was definitely a quicker review. I didn't have a lot to say on this knife. It's just a very basic knife. I don't carry it as often as I'd like, just because it kind of, you know, it's not as cool and intricate as a lot of my other pieces. But I promise you guys, my next review will be a little more exciting. We'll have a knife that's way more probably high-end, would be my guess. But yeah, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy. And of course, as always, thank you.